You ever get that feeling that when we talk about big, complicated problems, we're just not seeing things clearly? Today, we're going to dive into this powerful idea of scapegoating, but not just as an act of blame. We're going to look at it as a deep-seated problem of distorted vision. And to get there, we have to go way back.
So, our story actually starts almost 2,000 years ago, with this line from a Roman-era writer named Tertullian. Now, I know it looks a little mysterious, right? But believe me, this ancient observation is about to unlock a very modern and very dangerous political problem.
And here's what it means. Get this. Tertullian was actually writing a legal defense. He was arguing that the authorities had become completely incapable of seeing the truth. And this double failure, on one hand, ignoring the reality of what is, and on the other, inventing phantoms of what is not, that's the engine of scapegoating. It was then, and it still is now.
So, let's really break down what these two kinds of blindness are. I mean, how do they actually work together to create a way of thinking that is so powerful and so often so incredibly destructive?
You can think of it like a 1-2 punch to our perception. The first blindness, that's a failure of attention. It's choosing not to see what's right there in front of us, the messy, complex reality of people's lives. And the second blindness is its toxic partner. It's actively inventing things, stereotypes, threats, phantoms, to fill in that empty space. So one ignores the truth, and the other creates a really convenient lie.
This diagram really shows how it all comes together. So look at that circle on the left, not seeing what is. That's all the ordinary stuff that gets ignored. People just living their lives, working, studying. Now look at the right circle, seeing what is not. These are the ghosts we invent: contamination, invasion, collective guilt. And that overlap in the middle? That is the danger zone. That's where this toxic mix becomes real-world violence or political theater.
Okay, so this is all a bit theoretical, right? Let's bring it down to earth with a real-world case study. We're going to look at how this dynamic has played out in modern South Africa. It's a country facing some really deep and complex challenges, and it's exactly that kind of complexity that creates a powerful temptation to find a simple target for all the blame.
When a society is struggling with unemployment, with crime, with failing services, a simple story can be incredibly seductive. And this sentence right here, it just captures it perfectly. It offers to trade the heavy burden of complexity for the sweet psychological relief of a single, visible cause.
So how do you fight back against a story that powerful? Well, you start by correcting that first blindness. You have to force yourself to see what is really there, armed with actual data instead of stories driven by fear. So, what do the facts actually tell us?
Well, it starts with this one number, 8.9%. That's the share of immigrants in South Africa's entire employed workforce. Now, that's a real number. It's significant for sure, but it is a far, far cry from the idea of a labor market being overrun, a myth the whole scapegoat story totally depends on. This one fact starts to poke a hole in that illusion.
And this chart gives us an even clearer picture of where many immigrants are actually working. You can see they're deeply woven into the sectors that keep homes running, buildings going up, and local shops open. The data here suggests they're not some force outside the economy, they are a vital part of it.
And it goes even deeper than that. This data shows that far from only taking jobs, many immigrants are actually making jobs, hiring South Africans and transferring valuable skills. This directly dismantles that harmful stereotype of the foreigner as some kind of parasite.
Now, this is so important to understand. This way of thinking isn't new to South Africa. The entire system of apartheid was built on this exact same double blindness. First, refusing to see the dignity and shared humanity of Black South Africans, and second, inventing the phantom of them as a threat to civilization. Seeing that historical pattern is absolutely key to understanding its echo today.
So the dynamic we've just looked at in South Africa, well, it's not unique, not by a long shot. It's a pattern that shows up again and again. So let's zoom out and see how this pattern of distorted vision plays out on a more global scale.
For example, the source material notes that in the United States, some political rhetoric has used the language of contamination, framing migrants not as people, but as some kind of biological threat. I mean, that kind of language is a textbook example of that second blindness, seeing a danger that just isn't there.
And just like in the South African case, this narrative often crumbles when you actually hold it up to the evidence. The source points out that research consistently fails to support the stereotype of the immigrant as being somehow more criminal. So once again, you see this profound clash between the phantom and the facts.
Okay, so if this double blindness is the disease, what's the cure? How do we fight back against this powerful distortion and start to recover our sight? Well, the source suggests it's not a passive thing. It actually requires a conscious, active discipline.
One really powerful antidote comes from the philosophy of Ubuntu. Now, this isn't just some nice, fuzzy sentiment. It's a rigorous way of seeing the world. It insists that we see ourselves in other people, that our humanity is all tied up together. It is a direct challenge to the dehumanization that scapegoating absolutely needs to work. And this philosophy gives us 3 really practical things we can do. First, make a conscious effort to see the individual person before you see the label they've been given. Second, be really vigilant about the language we use and hear, and just actively reject anything that dehumanizes people. And third, trust what you learn from real face-to-face interactions more than the simplistic slogans you hear from far away.
In the end, as the author of our source material, Richard Stevenson, puts it so well, scapegoating is a surrender. It's basically an admission that we've stopped trying to understand complexity, to solve real problems, and to respect the dignity of others. It's the easy way out, and it always comes at a huge cost.
So I want to leave you with a question, not just about other people, but for ourselves, in our own communities, in our own countries. What are we being trained to see? And maybe the more important question is, what are we being trained to ignore? Because the first step to getting our sight back is having the courage to admit that we might be blind.